ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. צריכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
My goodness, it actually feels almost like normal in here. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It means so much to us that so many of you are here in person, and we love you there at home. Keep on tuning in. Any way we could come together means anything and everything to us. Tomorrow morning, we have two wonderful Bnei Mitzvah, one at 10 and one at 12. To begin their celebration, we want to call on Carrie and Scott Leshin and Casey and Spencer Wanderer to kindle the Sabbath lights.
As we light these Shabbat candles, we link ourselves with the generations of our people who have kindled these holy flames. Time passes quickly, and we take this moment to pause and express our gratitude. We stand here with humility and with love for this occasion, for one another, and for being a part of the sacred community.
As we participate in this age-old ritual, we embrace this moment as we move forward in the cycle of our lives. Yesterday, we held our children in our arms, and tomorrow they will be called to the Torah as Bnai Mitzvah. These Shabbat candles not only remind us of the joy of this occasion, but help us to see the light within one another and the strengths that each of us possesses. Grateful for all the precious gifts in our lives, we kindle the Sabbath lights.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
He will, so Like most of us, I am profoundly troubled by what is happening across the world. Wednesday, I got off a plane from TBJ South, reuniting with members, some of whom I haven't seen in almost 2 years. It was full of connectivity and redemptive relief. I got back into Newark, ran home, changed, and took my family to see Elton John. There I ran into joyful TBJ members, Didn't know my little sister was there. Joyfully greeted her and my niece. I drank, I ate, I danced with my kids and my wife, and enjoyed my favorite rocker of childhood. I got home, was gleefully exhausted, went to sleep, and returned to temple to serve with focus and a fulfillment that I get daily from being a rabbi. All these things I mention, I didn't think anything of, because I live in a country where that kind of joy is available to me by virtue of being a citizen of this great nation. And then I gaze across the world and see people who had those same freedoms just 10 days ago. Now, they are picking up guns many didn't know how to shoot and are putting it all on the line to defend what so many of us, luckily, are able to take for granted. I believe that so many of us, me, our children, and yours and others, would arm up and fight also. I'm no hero. I'm a rabbi. I'm the son of an academic. But my heart is strong and replete with conviction. I want my patriotic inheritance, not because I deserve it, but because I will protect what I believe I deserve. Freedom is our birthright, not to be mistaken as a guarantee. We are glued to our televisions and internet sites because we can't actually believe that an audaciously autocratic, maniacal, genocidal dictator rolls into his neighboring country and slaughters hundreds and eventually thousands of innocents. Many of us, as we've shared on the internet, emanate from those parts of the world. We shouldn't be mistaken. There was a lot of hate towards our people once upon a time. But people change, and they elected a Jewish president years before we ever will. Tonight, throughout our prayer service, we will stop to acknowledge the virtues of freedom, of valor, of hope. Let us take these first few moments of silence to pray for Ukraine and remember to protect and cherish always our sweet, sweet freedom. We pray in silence.
If I had a hammer, I would hammer in the morning. I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger. I'd hammer out a warning. I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning. I would ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger. I'd ring out warning. I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. If I had a song, I would sing it in the morning. I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. All over this land. I'd sing out danger. I'd sing out a warning. I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. the bell of freedom. It's a song about love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land.
And with that spirit of freedom, of joy, of collective voice, we turn to page 20 in our prayer books and continue welcoming Shabbat with Lecha Dodi.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmianu el hameuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemu tiferet ve'litila lecha dodi likrat kala Shabbat nekabela likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha ki mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila lecha dodi likrat kala Shabbat nekabela.
Verse 5. Hitoreri,
ki ba'orech kumi ori uri shir daberi v'od Adonai alayich nigla lecha dodi likrat kala Shabbat nekabela.
verse 9. Boi v'shalom ateret bala
גם בשמחה ובצולה תוך אמונה עם סגולה בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קלה שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה שבת
We turn ahead now, prayer books to page 146, and invite you to please rise for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch hu et Adonai
המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
We pray together in the Hebrew, page 147. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv haravim, b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, ובתבונה משנה עתים, ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים, במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו, בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור.
הוא מעביר יום ומביא לילה, הוא מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הרבים.
The middle of page 148 responsively. In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world.
In each age we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment we stand face to face with truth.
In each age we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment the knowing heart is filled with wonder.
In each age the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
The middle of page 151 responsively. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all.
Yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound.
Before our eyes there is a vision of perfection, of order, of goodness.
There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul.
When will redemption come?
When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves.
Long ago we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High.
We learned God's presence redeems time and event, so we celebrate this power that makes for freedom.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב ויעלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאי ישראל.
Give us a place to rest, O God. Shelter us from the long, soft evening shadows of your truth. You are true protection and safety. In your presence we find love and acceptance. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours.
Baruch atah Adonai, ha'porei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
As we pray to our shelter of peace, we turn our thoughts to those in our community who are in need of a prayer of healing. On this Shabbat, we send our prayers to Cindy Baker, Ira Bernstein, and Ada Barbara Corvelli, to Moshe Daniel, Rick Gratt, and Ivy Kirschenbaum, to Julie Levine, David Rothman, and Sharon Saltzman, to Teresa Schlossberg, Tammy Schwartzberg, and Shmuel Ben Rivka. If there are others in our community for whom you'd like us to say a public Misha Berach, a public prayer for healing, please raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you to say their name out loud. And if you feel so comfortable and inclined to share your relationship with them, prayers for healing. Kelly. Patty.
My cousin Susan Sachs and my friend Janet Zucker.
Thank you. Yeah, Susan.
Two brothers, Eddie and Lawrence Greenberg.
Dina. Yeah.
My cousin Tyrone Smith.
Thank you. Please. Thank you. Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Rofei Cholim. We praise you, Adonai our God, you who we call healer of the sick.
May the
The second blessing of the Amidah, Gevurot, means strength, speaking to the heroes in our history that embody and demonstrate that true sense of heroism, and more than that, valor. We praise and thank God for giving life to all, for giving strength to all, to those who, amongst others, have fallen, those who are captive, and those who are sick. This Shabbat, there are those in Ukraine who are that definition of valor, both soldiers and civilians who are rising up, pursuing righteousness and seeking peace. May they continue to act with that sense of courage amidst the utter unknown of what the future holds for them, for their families, their community, and, of course, their country. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives life to all and gives strength to heroes, past, present, and future. Again, a moment of silence. Continue on page 155, and I'll invite you to rise for the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekoneh Hakol, V'zocher Chasei Avot v'imachot, Umevi Geula livnei v'neihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol, Atah Rav le'hoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. And with all of those who are fighting day and night for peace, we take a moment to pray for peace. Shalom Rav, page 164.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Ki atah melech adon, lecho hashalom. Ki atah And whenever there is strife in the world, we draw from our well of hope, that well that never has gone dry, no matter how dire things might seem. You see, each time we pray for peace, it refills our well of hope, that belief, that tikvah, that just as the sun rises each day, there's also a way to keep believing that things will get better. So for this third moment of silence, at the end of this very long week, we take this moment to look into our own hearts, turning our internal gaze eastward, first to the people of Ukraine, and of course, to our Jewish brothers and sisters in our homeland, praying, drawing from that well, hoping for a better tomorrow for people everywhere. We take this moment to pray in silence.
And he's quite a baseball player also. I'm getting the chills out of me first. To introduce our speaker this evening, as we continue to explore our roots, especially our connection to our homeland, I invite up to introduce our speaker, the person with the strongest voice in our house, my wife, Lauren Rutkin.
You know the movie with Renee Zellweger, like You Had Me at Hello? Well, I feel like he had us at Hatikva. That was so amazing. So I'm here to introduce Adam. I didn't even know he was coming. It's not like we talk about everything that goes on here. And I saw it in the weekly newsletter, and I said, I can't believe Adam's coming. I've known him for more than a decade. He serves as the executive director of the Israel Action Network and the associate vice president for public affairs at the Jewish Federations of North America. But I've known Adam for, like I said, 10 years when he worked for AIPAC. He looks really young, and he is, but he was even younger then, and he took on this major job. He was running the student department at APAC, and I worked at APAC for 10 years, but I knew him because I work for a foundation. I'm the executive director at a foundation, and we funded a major program at APAC. But Adam and I don't just know each other. We traveled together. We went to Alabama, we were at Hopkins, Penn, Yale, about 6 colleges and universities, meeting with students and really encouraging them to get involved in Israel, pro-Israel activism, and really fighting the fight on campus, because that's where it really started. I mean, we see the battles now going on in Congress, state and local legislatures, in our schools, but it really started and we see it on campus. One of my best memories of Adam was when we went to Alabama State, and my boss, who's a child of survivors, can't miss anything. So we had a meeting in the morning where Martin Luther King lived and spent most of his time when he was in Alabama. And then at the end of the day, we were at Alabama State, so we had about 6 hours in between. And my boss says, well, we have to go to Selma. And Adam just started this job, and he's like, I don't know. I mean, are we gonna make it? I'm like, we're gonna make it, Adam. So we drove from Montgomery to Selma. We saw the church. We went to a small museum. We found a tour guide. They took us all over. We went to the bridge. It was one of the highlights, actually, that my boss still talks about. And then, of course, on our way back, we stopped at Dairy Queen, which is always where we stop when I'm traveling with my boss. But we could guess that Adam did not go into this business for the stock options. He really believes in it, and he is on the front lines of this critical work involving pro-Israel activism, and it's just so complex today. I think back when I started with Adam that it was, we were talking about Israel Day on campus and could they do it, and those are easy days compared to what we're dealing with today. So he'll take it from here, but it's really my pleasure to invite Adam Teitelbaum to speak about all the wonderful things happening in the world.
Shabbat Shalom. First, as a continuation of that really wonderful and personal introduction, if you ever want to be able to do well in life, you've got to have accountability partners. I really believe in the value of accountability partners. I don't know if you would agree with this, there's no better accountability partner than Lauren Rutkin. I mean, I got to experience through my work with APAC. Lauren, thank you for everything that you taught me and brought to our students because of how you pushed us to always be better. Lichvod HaRabbanim, thank you very much for having me tonight. That was a remarkably beautiful chanting of tonight's liturgy. For the singer and the violinist, I hope, my prayer for you is you continue to love doing the practicing and the violin lessons, because should never have stopped piano lessons. Man, was that a mistake. So I hope that you get to continue to love that as part of your art and your craft and who you are. And tonight, coming to be in person, I was kind of like welling up a little bit. This is the very first in-person briefing, presentation, service, anything that I've done in 2 years, really. So to be here, to see faces, there's a lot to be said about the magic of being in person. And to also be, in our tradition, we talk about reading our liturgy over and over again. Every year we read the same parshas over and over again. And to an outside observer, it might seem boring. Like, why do you just keep reading the same chapters over and over and over again? But our tradition teaches us that we learn something new every single time we hear our history. Avraham Infeld, a very popular and famous educator, somebody who was the executive director of Hillel for a long time, he gives this very powerful speech where he talks about Judaism is not a religion. He's South African, so he's got a very booming South African accent. Judaism is not a religion. And one of the things that he points to is that Judaism, we don't have history, we have memory. that we don't have a history, we have memory, that these stories that we tell are not history books. We're telling our family story. We're recounting our family traditions and the memories of the years that were. And every single time I hear these stories, I'm in a new stage of my life. And through 2 years of COVID-19 and the pandemic and switching jobs, there's a lot of new in my life that I take from our liturgy. And one of them recently is actually with a new tradition that I've done. I haven't done this really in my whole life, but with my wife and I were very grateful to welcome our first in September. So a little 5-month-old who keeps us awake. Last night he was screaming from 3:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. nonstop, so I'm a little bit delirious. But what I'm loving about being in this room is to see the families. And I think that there's such a rich tradition here. Even we said it in the Shema today, that there's the tradition that I've adopted is every night when I put Nani to bed, I say the Shema with him. And I had never done that. Growing up my whole life, I've never said the Shema before bed. I've known that it's a tradition to say it. And now whenever I say it, there's this line in the Shema. It says, and here are the things that you should put onto your heart. And you should instill them on your children. On your children. And to talk to them and to put it on them when you're sitting in your home, and when you're walking in the street, and when you go to bed and when you wake up. Talk about this moment where I'm holding my son and thinking about what is this responsibility of instilling on him how to be a human, how to be a valuable part of society. And that type of liturgical reminder that we have every single day and every single week, I think that there's real power with it. One other one that I think just we talk about tonight, and then I promise I'll get into Israel, and I'm not trying to take over the rabbinical roles, I promise. But we'll talk about all of the things happening with Israel. But it's in the Kiddush for Friday nights. There's this part of the Kiddush where we open it up saying, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, blessed are you, our God, Lord of the world, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav. You have sanctified us with your mitzvot. And I don't know if you've heard this one before, but kiddashta, like the idea of kiddush, holiness, there's an aspect and a definition of holiness that's not just about holy, but it's about separate. And an idea that we as the Jewish people are separate. And we take a tremendous amount of pride in how we are differentiated. We are distinct from the other nations, religions, people around us. Today in the world, there's a lot of news in so many ways that from an Israel standpoint, it's easy to get bogged down in the negative of the news. I think that Lauren mentioned that I've been working with campus for 15 years. I'm sure that at this point, the acronym BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, this has become, it's a home-known acronym, which is, from a marketing standpoint, they've done a great job. But the fact that we have to be worried about BDS. When is the BDS resolution coming to campus this fall? What are we going to do to defeat and push back on BDS? The rise of BDS in corporate activism. The fact that we're thinking on the defensive in this way is, on the one hand, it's a shame that we have to be thinking about Israel in this defensive way, but it also reminds us that these threats are real. That this is not just some made-up boogeyman that we in the Jewish community and the pro-Israel community are out there trying to simply fundraise or build organizations around, that it's a real threat. And just this year alone, just as a quick recap, and here's my Israel part of the conversation for today, which is last May, Hamas, some would say unprovoked. We can get into the semantics and the details if we want to. But in a pretty unprovoked way, Hamas launched 4,300 rockets into Israel. Some of those rockets landing in Gaza and killing their own civilians, many landing in Israel, putting Israelis into bomb shelters across the entire country, We all saw, I'm sure, the videos, the harrowing videos of the miraculous Iron Dome, like a 4th of July fireworks show in the sky, intercepting hundreds of incoming rockets at a time. And if we were able to have the cognitive dissonance for a moment to recognize, wow, it's remarkable how it's all lit up, to then remember that every single plume of smoke and every single fire explosion is a rocket with the intent to kill civilians, to terrorize. In response to Israel's protection of its citizens, social media erupted in some of the most vitriolic anti-Semitic rhetoric that I've seen in my entire life. I got involved in this work right around the time of the Second Intifada, where the newsreels were all about the Israel Goliath against the Palestinian David, and the reversal of that role, that now with social media, a proliferation. A single Bella Hadid tweet to her followers are 5x the number of Jews in the world, and she and perpetuating negative information about Israel. That the only, in some ways of a backward saving grace that war went on for as long as it did, to me, was people who at the outset were saying, it's not so bad, maybe Israel made some choices, maybe they kind of deserved it a little bit. After about 10 days of the vitriol on social media, because in marketing, we know this, you have to hear something, I think it's like 18 times before it really sets in, that after about 10 days, people went, wait a second, some of these criticisms of Israel, they sound pretty anti-Semitic. And we were awakened again to the fact that there is a real legitimate threat out there. And after the summer with this eruption on social media, in October, there was a group in Washington, D.C. that was coming together to protest, to rally for voting rights legislation and D.C. statehood. And one of the partners of the coalition, Sunrise D.C., which is the D.C. chapter of a national climate change movement, the Sunrise Movement, the D.C. chapter said, we're backing out. We cannot, in good conscience, be a part of a rally, of an organization, of a movement that allows for Zionist organizations to be in the coalition. And they listed in there the RAC, the Religious Action Center, part of the Reform Movement, the URJ, JCPA, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, and National Council for Jewish Women, NCJW. They said, we cannot be a part of any entity that has Zionists. Well, none of those three organizations are overtly Zionist. Sure, they're pro-Israel, but they're Jewish organizations. It was a very thinly veiled and very miscalculated step by Sunrise DC. We, through the Israel Action Network and a number of other partners working with the three named organizations, were able to get Sunrise DC to reverse their statement and the Sunrise Movement to distance themselves from that position. A small victory in what is such a challenging recognition of the perniciousness that exists beneath that surface. Not a month later, there was an organization called the American Muslims for Palestine, a group that probably none of you have ever heard of, but they fund a lot of pro-Palestinian, very anti-Israel work, especially Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, which exists on campus. They put out a report that said, if you want to work in coalition with the American Muslims for Palestine, you must only work with the following Jewish organizations. If you are working with any Zionist organizations, you cannot be in coalition with us. Hillel International, the Jewish Home on college campuses, Jewish Federations of North America, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, one or two others. I feel like Rick Perry. Here's the 5-point plan. So they listed these organizations that you cannot be a part of. The only Jewish organizations or the Zionist organizations you were allowed to work with, 3 organizations who themselves are anti-Zionist and pretend to speak as a voice for the majority of the Jewish people. About a month after that, the executive director of CARE, a Muslim Islamic religious organization similar to the Jewish Federations of North America, but for the Muslim community, gives a speech in Austin, Texas, where she says, you cannot trust the Zionists in their synagogues. They are just trying to find their way into your heart so that they can deceive you. CARE doesn't even distance themselves from the executive director's statement. And about a month after that, CARE puts out a report similar to the AMP one, talking about if you want to be in coalition with us, you cannot be connected to Zionists. And people ask us, what's the connection with anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism? Isn't it okay to criticize the Israeli government? It's not anti-Semitic to criticize the Israeli government? Of course. And if you want any real criticism of the Israeli government, I know you've heard this line before because it's true. Just pick up an Israeli newspaper. So about a month ago, Amnesty International UK, an organization that has committed itself to exposing hate in the world and eradicating hate in the world, puts out a report that they've been working on for years. Think about the time and intensity that goes into a report that they've been working on for years. Hundreds of pages long, saying Israel is guilty of apartheid. An organization, Amnesty International, that prides itself on the legitimacy of their research, puts out this report saying Israel is an apartheid, a state that has in its coalition Arab Islamists, that the highest court of the land has Arab judges, not Jewish Arabs, Muslim Arabs. Because again, in this conversation about what is and isn't legitimate criticism, what is or isn't apartheid, let's debate the nuances of the definition of apartheid. Israel is a multi-ethnic, multinational, multiracial country with the unifying fact of being the Jewish state. So how could a report like Amnesty International come out and look the world in the eye and say, this is a legitimate report? And they had the audacity. In an interview, I think it was about last week, in an interview with the head of Amnesty UK, to say, what gives? Like, you're doing all this research. Why are you targeting in Israel? Why are you coming out with this report? They said, because in Israel, there's free press. We have the ability to understand what's happening in Israel. We can look inside of Israel, and we can write a report about it. We can't do that in Russia, in Saudi Arabia, in China, in any of the other places where there are human rights abuses. So they're picking on Israel because it's a land with free press and democracy and representative government. What kind of Orwellian world do we live in? And so I often, and by the way, just to add on top of this whole layer, that right now in the UN, there's this commission of inquiry happening. And the idea that there's going to be yet another report that's going to come out and say Israel is an apartheid state. They're adding it as a permanent part of the UN, which is the second permanent part because they already have Article 7, which means that every single time the Human Rights Council meets in Israel, the UN, they talk about Israel. Like there aren't other issues going on in the world. So people ask me, what do we do about it? And this is what my life has been dedicated to. It's been about how do we push back? How do we fight? How do we stand up for the safety and security of the Jewish community and for Israel, the sole Jewish country in the world? And today the answer that I want to give might be a little counterintuitive. It's not going to be about rallies. It's not going to be about calling your representatives, which I'm happy to talk about, especially after a long career at AIPAC, a proud career at AIPAC. Today, when's Rosh Chodesh? Today, tomorrow? Today, it's like we're in Rosh Chodesh, Adar. Any pop quiz? The holiday that's in Adar? Purim. So Purim is coming up this month. Purim, a story we've told so many times. I think one of the best examples of talk about a story that you're going to get a different thing if you read it at different parts of your life. The intention of the BDS movement, the intention of all of this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic effort, in my opinion, is to knock us off our game. Remember that we are Kodesh. We are separate. We are holy intentionally. And in a world where there's growing universalist tendencies, where we just want to be part of the fabric of society, to have our very differences pointed out to us in a way that's going to make us feel self-conscious, that's going to gaslight us, that's going to make us feel that we're doubting our reality of the threats facing the Jewish community, physical and emotional. That is the goal of the BDS movement. In the story of Esther, we hear and we find Haman, one of the worst villains against the Jewish people. He says to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered, dispersed among the other peoples in all the provinces of your realm, whose laws are different from those of any other people who do not obey the king's laws. And it's not in your interest to let them stay. The very fact that we are different is going to be used against us again. We're going to be called disloyal. It's not a new claim. It's going back thousands and thousands of years. This is a broken record for those of you who can understand the reference. Young people, it's like imagine your MP3, like just keeps repeating the same little, no, you're not going to get it. We'll explain it later. That this threat has existed for thousands of years. So what can we do about it? Esther says, what am I going to do about it to her uncle Mordecai? I can't do anything about it. If I go in front of the king without him first inviting me in, he'll kill me. And Mordecai says, well, what if you were put in this royal position for exactly this task? What if you exist in this position for exactly this moment? And Esther goes and risks her life. She goes in front of the king and literally risks her life to save her people, to say, I haven't been wearing my Jewishness on my sleeve. I didn't lead with it. I'm not coming to you to say I should be your queen because I'm Jewish and I want to build a relationship with you, so when there's a BDS resolution in Shushan, you're going to vote against it. That's not how she starts her relationship. She builds a genuine relationship for when you're older. Maybe it's not so genuine, but she's building a relationship. And Mordecai says, maybe you're in this role for exactly this moment. She risks her life, and as a result of it, ends up saving the Jewish people. Saving the Jewish people to the point where there's a line, and I love this. This is, again, one of these liturgical moments in Judaism where we say it every Saturday night for Havdalah. Every Saturday night when we say Havdalah, we say, La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason Vikar. That it was such an incredible moment, this relief, that knowing that our doom was impending, that we were saved. We were saved to the point that the La Yehudim Haita Ora, there was light and there was happiness and joy and honor, so much so that every single week we're supposed to remind ourselves what that moment of levity felt like. So what do we do in the face of all of this anti-Semitism, all of this anti-Israel rhetoric? What are we going to do about it? You show up to Friday night services with your family. In the face of the atrocity of what happened in Colleyville a couple weeks ago, what do? You show up with your family. You lead by example with your children, and you bind it on their hearts to say, we are proud of what makes us unique. We're going to dig into what makes us Kodesh, what makes us special. Reading these stories every year gives me a reinvigoration as we face it's so unnerving to open Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or the New York Times. For those of you who still read a newspaper, open a newspaper. But there's a lot to be said about what it means to be proud of the fact that we come from and we are part of a family with a memory, who learns from our memory, who lives our memory, who instills our memory on the next generation. And because of that, we know, Tikkun Olam, because of what we do, the world will be a better place. What better way can we, in the face of people whose sole intention is to gaslight us and make us question our very existence, what better rebuttal to that is there than to be proud of who we are and to lean into it. As Hillel says when he teaches the Torah on one foot, do not do unto others as you would not do unto yourself. There's a second line that is often forgotten in the quote, and with this I'll close. Somebody says, teach me the whole Torah on one foot. He says, do not do unto others as you would not have done unto yourself. The rest is commentary, now go study. The rest is commentary, now go study. In the face of all this, I can teach you the rebuttals, I can teach you the talking points, I could teach you the history, I could teach you how to lobby Congress, I could teach you every single aspect of that. I could teach you how to organize, we could teach you how to build a movement. But until you are proud of who you are and you are standing on both feet proudly, then the rest is commentary, and we'll go and study. Shabbat Shalom, thank you for having me.
Also, I was up from 2:30 to 5:30 with my daughters. I'm with you. Should I invite them or in their seats?
It is, in addition to being a special evening on many levels, it is the first Friday of the month of March. And as such, we are going to honor those of you who are celebrating either a birthday or an anniversary in this month. And so if that applies to you, if you are celebrating a birthday or an anniversary, I'm going to invite you to please rise where you are so that we may bless you. Great. So everything that we just heard, I'm feeling particularly invigorated and inspired by that, and it brings me to the idea of celebration. Part of the way that we stand up to all of the forces in the world that would knock us down is to stop and to celebrate, to acknowledge the passage of time and all the beautiful blessings that are in our lives. And so to all of you who are celebrating some kind of milestone in your lives this month, I wish only for you that you experience light, joy, gladness, and really a sense of peace. Peace in our world, peace in your lives. And I'm thinking a lot about the word peace and its connection to the word shlemut, wholeness or completion. And in a world that can feel so broken and so depleting at times, it is the people that surround us with love and with blessings and with joy when we celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, the people that walk the walk of our lives with us, making each day feel just a little bit less challenging. That's what makes it a life worth living. And so to all of you, we wish that you have the year ahead in your relationships, in your lives, be filled only with joy and with gladness. And that said, we know that's unrealistic. And so when you are facing the inevitable challenges, we wish you lots of love, support, and friendship. And we hope that you'll come to Shabbat with your family regularly in this next year of your lives. So with that, I'm going to invite the rest of the congregation to please rise as well as we turn with our open ark. We're going to join together with the words of Shehechianu. Please join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We praise you, Adonai, and we thank you for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this moment in our lives and in the lives of this congregation. Amen. Turn back in our prayer books to page 282 and remain standing for the words of Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, lateit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz
bayom hahu, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad.
At this point in our service, we come to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. These words honor the lives of those in our families and our communities who we have lost. If you hear the name of someone that you are remembering tonight, if you are so inclined, we invite you to rise in honor of their memory. At the conclusion, all of the names I will read will invite everyone to stand together to join in the words of Kaddish. In the last 7 days in the period of Shiva, we remember Harry Peck, father of Robin Buchalter. And in the period of Shloshim, the 30 days of mourning, we remember Nancy Brous, Louis Bogdanoff, and Janice Levine. And on their anniversary of passing, this Shabbat, their yahrzeit, we remember Paul Scott Amsterdam, Elsie Diamond Barron, Harold Harvey Beiser, William W. Bergman, Alice Bernheim, Milton Burns, Molly Blech, Henry M. Block, Paul Brenman, David M. Caro, Samuel Dreskin, Jacob Dreyfus, Abraham Fenster, Dina Freinberg, Leonard B. Freinberg, Bella Gerard, Philip Charles Glass, Philip C. Glass, Frida O. Goldsmith, Fanny B. Goodman, Fred J. Hamburger, Etta Rose Holder, George Victor Jacoby, Daniel Kaplan, Fanny K. Klein, Constance Klinger, Abe Critchman, Eleanor Lillian, Helene Myers Lowenstein, Jennifer Rosen Mead, Charles Michael, Fanny Nass, Joseph Lloyd Nathan, Dr. Louis Knoll, Elena Novia, Francis Perlman, Herbert F. Polikoff, Rebecca Rockland, Sadie Rosenstock, Nettie Roth, Thomas Kalman Rubin, Helen Saltzman, Mortimer Saltzman, Dr. Vera Scheckman, Minnie Krieger Schloss, Moses Schloss, Kathy Schneider, Dr. Bernard Schoen, Alice Seid, Dr. Jacob Maurice Silverstein, Charles Starkman, Rose Steiner, Ferdinand Steinhardt, and Rosa Weil. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may each of their memories ever be for a blessing. Page 294, please rise for the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon uv'yomeichon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, bagalau v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam olamei maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudsha brichu, Elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damin ram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, v'yasei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who makes harmony on high bring peace to us and to people everywhere. As together we say, amen. Please be seated. Just a few announcements before we conclude our service. The first is that it is so good to see you all, and we hope to see even more of you immediately following services at our Oneg. Our Oneg tonight is sponsored by the Kirschenbaum family, whose son Max, and he's going to do it again at the end of services, filled us with that pride in hearing Hatikva. It is also sponsored by our beloved Harriet Perlmutter-Pilchik, who has a milestone birthday this weekend. So we wish you a milestone happy birthday. We won't tell you, say how old, but happy birthday, Harriet. Thank you for contributing to that. Following services, I just also want to thank Robin and Ira Widehorn, who I don't think are here, but they are hosting a group of 12th graders. Adam is actually joining us for Shabbat dinner, and he's going to continue the conversation with our students who are actually going to campus next year. So we are back, and we are really committed to doing things that are really going to help our community do what we need to do. So Adam, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for continuing the conversation with us later. You've heard a lot about Ukraine tonight. On Sunday morning, I hope you saw in the email that Rabbi Gewirtz is going to be in conversation with our chief executive of our federation, Dov Ben Shimon. He was just in Jerusalem. In a few days, he's actually going to the Poland-Ukraine border. And so he really has a lot of expertise in this area and is going to help us unpack it. If you're going to be in person in the Hoffman Library or on Zoom, but either way, please join us at 9:45 on Sunday. This is really important stuff to be talking about. Yes, and thank you. Two more things then. One is Purim. Purim is coming. You heard Adam say it, and it's a great time to sign up for something, whether you are of any age, that you can sign up to do something fun to celebrate Purim. Thank you, Chloe, for contributing your beautiful voice. That Misha Berach was gorgeous, and we hope you will do it again for us sometime. And
next time, Shalom Rach.
yes, next week, yeah. Absolutely. Finally, we have two phenomenal young men who are being called to the Torah tomorrow. So I want to invite up Judah Leshin and Ryan Wander to join us here to make Shabbat evening Kiddush and Motzi. And I will say that the Kiddush cups you are using are gifts from our congregation's Women's Association and Brotherhood. We hope that the sweetness they are filled with on this night is sweetness you will feel every day of your life. You can put your binder right up here, buddy. Do you want to open it up to the page? Is it right here? Where is it? Right here? And when you are ready, ready? 1, 2,
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'haharon uv'ratzon hinhalanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehila lemitzvah kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'harta v'tanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodsha v'ratzon hinhaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
So one of the good things about this COVID time has been that we used to give just a piece of challah. Now we give a whole challah to each bar mitzvah boy. So here you go. Now you can make French toast tomorrow. You have nothing else going on in the morning, right? Exactly. 1, 2, 3.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. We give you a lot of stuff to take home. As we bring our service to a close, we are going to invite Max Kirschenbaum back up to lead us in Hatikva, and this time we are going to invite you to participate. We'll invite you all to please rise. The words can be found on page 374. Max, take us home.
Shalom.